one of the things that we forget as leaders is that we need to look at how we are managing it, first of all, and what we're doing. So bear with me, but for the first time, the first thing I'd like you to do today is, if possible, I'd like you to take your phones and turn them upside down so that you can't see all those messages and texts and things that are pinging, whether it's from the children in your work that you work for you, or the actual children that you were once connected with an umbilical cord with. Turn it over, and then let's just spend the next hour concentrating on you. The next thing that I'd really like you all to do is just write down somewhere with an old-fashioned pen and paper, which is my preference, or if you're in the digital age, which I hear a lot of people are these days, shove it on your phone. Scale yourself. Where are you feeling right now on stress? One is you want to jump off a curb, sorry, other way around. One is you zen as zen can be. 10 is you want to jump off a curb. Tell there's so many things bubbling in your head. You're not really necessarily controlling. We'll talk a little bit later about what a fan of I am of with scales and some of the stuff that I've been doing with Brazen. But just for now, you scale yourself. So we're going to talk about you guys first. We're going to talk about you as leaders, as businesses. And the very first thing that we can all do, which I'm sure you're all of, our first line of defense when our stress levels start to rise, is our breath. And we forget about it. You know, I can't remember who it was talking just then about when you were training the police and not being able to see that body language. Lee, it was you yourself, and not being able to see that body language. And actually, one of the things that we miss out on when we're in those face-to-face meetings is actually being able to see that our breath is rising here, and we're feeling a bit more when we come forward as we're trying to get the breath in the top part of our chest and our lungs. Well, actually, by just calming our breath down and inhaling slowly and trying, I'm not going to go into meditation, don't worry, I'm not going to make you and ah. But if you just now practice breathing in slowly through your nose and exhaling slowly through your mouth for 6, and just notice what that's your body did. Actually, by that, inhaling by 4 and exhaling slowly by 6. What you're doing is you're calming your entire system. You're telling your brain to calm down, deal with things a little bit better. And we forget this so often, regardless of our level. You know, it's something that has to be taught, and it's something that we have to remind ourselves to do, and it's something that we have to practice. And by practicing that really, really simple thing, we can reduce our stress levels. So actually, by looking at that power of that breath, it might be that already you can look at that scale of where you were on that stress scale, and you can already feel that maybe you've come down a notch. You can maybe feel that you've just relaxed that little bit better, and you're actually concentrating, hopefully, on this call a little bit more. And therefore, what you're doing already is you're putting yourself in a state of relaxation. But by being in a state of relaxation, you're more open to looking at the new stuff that's coming in and the stuff that we're going to talk about. Okay, so stress, all the surveys are in. I mean, it's not rocket science, is it? We're all a little bit stressed. The pandemic has come in. Oh, amazing. Yes, we're all more stressed. It's come through everything, whether how we're running our businesses. Do we go back into the office? When do we go back into the office? How are the people in our care dealing with it? You know, from my point of view, I've always worked from home. I bloody love working from home. And then all of a sudden having my husband working from home and my kids working from home, that just blew my mind, and spent every day rocking in a corner. And that's one thing that we can also do. You know, we can go and rock in a corner for an next hour and drink a very large G&T because it is bank holiday weekend, and that might help our stress levels. But what we can do as well is we can look at some hints, tips and tactics of how we can move it forward. I don't need to tell you the facts, but actually the key fact that we need to remember is stress is contagious. You know, and if you're feeling stressed, you can bet your bottom dollar that your team is feeling stressed, that the people you live with are feeling stressed, that your children are feeling stressed. Because it's not anything that it's not something you can catch by touching a doorpost that somebody else has touched. Let's not go there. But it's something that is, those feelings, how you're moving, the way that your voice is, the way that you're working, people will catch on to that. And if those people have been living and breathing in your space for the past year, 2 years, if they work with you, if they live with you, then they will see that change and they will see that stress levels, and they will then take that on as well. It is, without a shadow of a doubt, it's cascades through every strata of our businesses. So one of the things that we don't just owe it to ourselves, but we owe it to all the people in our lives to try and deal with stress a little bit better, because we're never going to get rid of it, because you wouldn't be leaders in business if you weren't stressed, because actually stress is also a protector. Stress keeps you nimble, it keeps you agile, it keeps you able to move your business forward. So let's not see it as something that we want to completely get rid of, but let's look at how we manage it. We don't want to be spreading our stress. And what we need to do is we need to look after ourselves first. We have to put ourselves first. So one of the first things that we can do after we've taken those 10 deep breaths is just have a think about why we're feeling stressed, because that why is so important in every single conversation we have, whether we're training people in line management or whether we're looking at their well-being. But look at yourself. Why are you feeling stressed? Can you unpick it? Is it a call from a client? Is it a pitch? Is it all the life admin you've got to do? Is it the appraisals you've got to do? Or is it my favorite, which is a technical term, I'm thinking of copywriting it, non-specific anxiety disorder, which I like to suffer from on a daily basis, sometimes an hourly basis. And unless I'm unpicking that, then I'm just walking around in this bubble of nutsness, just worrying about what the hell is going on, but not unpicking it. And if you unpick it and you try and figure out what that thing is that's causing you that stress at that moment in time, it's much easier then to deal with it and to actually peel it back and say, all right, okay, well, it's that client or it's that person that's doing my head in the office or whatever it is. Then you can then deal with that situation. You can put an action plan together. You can actually put an outcome together rather than just bubbling around, driving yourself bonkers. So a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about now cascades down to the people in your care, but equally, let's focus on you. You very rarely get a chance to focus on you, I imagine. You very rarely get a chance to actually concentrate on you, even for 10 minutes, let alone, an hour. And don't worry, I'm not going to talk for an hour, and there's no death by PowerPoint, but what I am going to do is talk through some hints, tips and tactics, and then open the floor so everyone can tell me how they manage. The very first thing that I would recommend that we all do is look at what we're doing that very first hour of our day when we open our eyes. Our attitude determines our direction. Our mood in the first hour of our day will often determine the next 23. And I include 23 in that because your mood in your first hour can often impact on how you are then going to sleep that night. And we all know that if we're not getting enough sleep, then dear God, things get even worse. So, that first hour of the day, what are you doing in it? Have a think now. What did you do this morning? What was the first thing that you did? It might have been you had a child jumping on your head, so you had to start the day at 150 miles an hour. It might have been that the first thing you do is you roll over and you check your phone. It might be that you roll over and you kiss your partner. Anyway, I say that because he can listen. So, obviously that's really important. But, all these things that do really, really impact us for the rest of our day. So my biggest tip is practicing routines and rituals that first hour that you wake up. Now, it might be, I'm not going to advocate that we all turn our phones off. You're running businesses for the love of God. It's like, yes, let's all turn our phones off and then watch the world implode. It might be that actually scrolling through your phone mindlessly through Instagram or checking those emails and responding to those emails actually sets you up for the day of how you need to be set up. It's personal, but you have to make that conscious decision and that conscious choice that that's what you're doing the first hour of the day. And then other things that I think are really important that if you can bring in, and I appreciate if you've got young kids, this makes it quite impossible. And I'm part of an American group where they all get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to start the day at like 100 miles an hour and go through all this process. I can tell you that's not me. But one of the things that I do every single day without fail, and I have done for a long time, is I do what's called the morning pages, which is effectively called, it's journaling. Now, there's a lady called Julia Cameron, and she advocates this thing called morning pages. She's actually, gosh, I can't remember what the actual thing is called, but I will send it around to everyone afterwards. But she talks about it's a creative process. It's a 12-week process, and she works a lot with authors to help them unlock their process when it comes to writing. But equally, she works with all sorts of people. And one of the biggest things that she says you should do is get up in the morning, and all those thoughts that are in your head, you write them down on 3 pieces of paper. Unconscious streaming, does not need to be perfect sentences. Don't write it like someone else is going to read it in 20 years, because actually if you write it like that, then you write in the filtered story of your life rather than the horror that's going on in your mind as you wake up. Write it down. And then what you find is that once you've written that down, then you can start the day with a better, more solid outlook of what you need to achieve, rather than that non-specific anxiety sticking with you throughout the day. Gratitude. Sounds American, bit cheesy, depends on where you are on the whole cynical scale, but it is something we have to practice. The way our brains work scientifically, psychologically, is our brains will always remember the crap. We are programmed in fight or flight. We are programmed in survival, right back to when we were living in the caves. And actually, what our brains want to remember is the stuff that's going to keep us alive. So that's the stuff that's going to keep us on high alert. So back in the day when all those dinosaurs were roaming the world, that was the stuff to know how to run really sodding fast away from the dinosaur. Well, that would happen once in a blue moon. I'm imagining this. Obviously, I do not know, and I am not David Attenborough. But I imagine that you don't come into contact with the dinosaurs very often. So your fight or flight, your survival, your cortisol, all those hormones that are going to keep you alive, they come in, they surge, you get back in your cave, you eat your blueberries, and actually you feel fine again because it all calms down and you're able to get on. What's happened in modern day life is that fight and flight, and especially for leaders in businesses, that survival mode is constantly bubbling, and it has bubbled over during COVID. And it's not healthy. It's really not healthy for us to be constantly in that survival mode, which is why we need to calm our systems down. And one of the other ways we can calm our systems down is we can flood our brains with positivity. So when you're starting to feel really stressed and you're starting to feel like things are just crowding in, one of the easiest ways to actually allow yourselves to switch off a little bit is to start saying thank you. And I mean, it becomes hilarious because you're thanking yourself for really small things when things are bubbling. I'm thanking myself for this cup of coffee that I'm now drinking in peace. I'm thanking myself for the fact that I've been able to sit outside in the back garden for 5 minutes. I'm thanking the fact that my wisteria is looking amazing. I'm not thanking the fact that I've actually got a 12-week-old puppy who's decided to try and eat the wisteria from the wall. And then I found out that wisteria is highly toxic for dogs. Non-specific anxiety, right back there. So, you know, actually writing down things that you're thankful for, practicing gratitude, practicing happiness, really, really powerful. And what's really important is don't just think it, get a pen, write it, because the mere action of writing it, it takes it into the logical brain and it makes it actionable. Your brain thinks it's an action and therefore wants to act on it. Whereas if you're thinking it, your brain just thinks you're a bit of dreamy and it's just all right and it might not happen. Which brings me to my next point, how you're talking to yourself. You know, what did you think the last time you looked in the mirror? I'm not going to ask you to all share that, but, you know, just have a think. Last time you looked in the mirror when you walk past the mirror, you think, oh, Christ, my roots need doing, or oh, I best put some mascara on for this meeting so people can actually see my eyes, you know, or was it just a case of not even looking at yourself? But then importantly, what do you think of when that alarm goes off? How are you talking to yourself then? How many times a day do you say, I have to? I have to get up. I have to get the kids to school. I have to exercise. I have to do this appraisal. I have to get into the office. I have to make this phone call. If you change that language, and again, this is all based on science, if you change that language and that very simple word, have, to get, your brain turns it from a chore into a choice. Again, you have to practice it. Nina knows this. This is one of the things that Nina's taken from some of the courses that I've been doing with the fabulous gang at Brazen. But actually, if you turn that from I have to I get to exercise, your brain then sees it as a choice. And then all of a sudden it becomes a little bit more enjoyable. All of a sudden your brain wants to do it a little bit more. I have to get the kids up from school. You get to get the kids up from school. Imagine if you were in the office and you weren't able to do that. Look at all those conversations that you're having to have with yourself every single day, and look at how many times you can change that language in that conversation. And that power of that language and that conversation of how we talk to ourselves, but then importantly, how we talk to our teams, is really powerful, because just by changing some really small things in how we talk to the people in our care can have a massive impact on their productivity, their efficiency, and their happiness. Okay, so that's what you can control. You can control how you get up in the morning. It can give you certainty of the fact that you are making a choice, not a chore, of how you're going to be for the rest of the day. If you wake up and say, I get to be happy today, the likelihood is that those happiness hormones are going to flow through a little bit more. And sometimes you have to fight that. God, you know, I know all this crap, and I've been teaching this crap, and I've been learning this crap for a long time. And I still wake up in the morning and I'm still a bit, but I've got a toolkit now that I can delve into. And I know that I have to practice to make it turn around, to change it a little bit, to make it work a little bit harder for myself, to start alleviating those stressors in our system. And then the other thing that's worth thinking about, which I bet none of you do very often, is your reward systems. When you're doing something, how often do you reward yourself for doing it? So I bet you're all brilliant at rewarding your teams and the people you work with. I bet you're all brilliant at rewarding your families, about rewarding your kids, about giving them positive affirmations, about telling them how brilliant they are at something, about rewarding them, whether it's a McDonald's on the way home on a Friday, or whether it's your team for the community champion, or, you know, the person that's done brilliantly at the work that month. Where's your reward systems for yourself? Because without those reward systems, the outcomes of what you're going to get, there's no end. So actually, by putting something in place where you've got a reward system, even if it's a cup of coffee at lunchtime or a glass of wine in how long's appropriate on Friday of bank holiday weekend, you know, whatever that reward system is. Obviously, if you want to lose weight, don't reward yourself with all of the chocolate down the aisle in Asda. But, you know, what are those reward systems that you're putting in place for you? They're going to help flood the brain with positivity. They're going to help alleviate your stresses. And then the other thing that I think that a lot of leaders forget to do is their own personal development. You know, I think we know what we should be doing for our teams and for the people in our care. But actually, one of the best things that we can do is our own personal development, is working on ourselves. Learning something new allows you to learn about you. And one of the things that's been really interesting in some of the training that I've been doing with various agencies is when you ask someone, why do you do that? Or why do you want that? It's a really interesting question to ask, especially in those tough appraisal meetings when that account manager wants the account director's position or the account exec wants the account manager's position. Why do you want it? Because what you often find is it's like, oh, well, I'm not really sure why I want it, actually, because I'm just supposed to be an account manager now. I'm supposed to be an account director now. I'm supposed to be on the board now. But why? You know, if we unpick that why, it becomes quite powerful with ourselves. And personal development can often be one of the things we can gift ourselves. It means that we have something stronger than our stressors in place. It means that we're helping to shift the focus from a stressful place into something more positive and actionable and beneficial. whether it's training with someone amazing like me. Speak to Lisa if you need to know more information. You know, online courses, leadership coaching, tennis lessons, Nina. Someone told me she's having a tennis lesson this weekend. Obviously, I wasn't supposed to say that. But, you know, whatever's going on and whatever you're taking on that's new, that's helping you. Studies have shown that people who participate in learning activities at work can avert the negative effects of stress and enhance mental well-being. Well, in a nutshell, how amazing is that? But then actually, if you layer on that benefit of training, then you've got increased productivity, you've got increased efficiency, you've got a better, happier workforce that aren't going to leave. Because actually, that's one of the things that, you know, is worth thinking about, because that happier workforce is really important. One of the studies that has come out recently from America, but they've cascaded it in the UK, is that there's going to be a huge churn rate in workplaces post-COVID. Because it's the one thing that people can control. They can control where they go to work. And actually, if they're feeling a bit crap, then they'll look to the easiest thing to change. And often that's the workplace, because let's face it, it's easier to jump ship in PR than it is to look at yourself. Well, if we're teaching our teams and ourselves how to look at ourselves and build those layers, then actually they're less likely to then move on. Less likely. They still might. There's still going to be a churn, but you're putting the layers in place. Personal development helps motivation, improve focus, empowerment, all of your relationships, and ultimately a positive attitude. So that's you lot nailed, sorted. Everyone feeling less stressed? Everyone sorted? Everyone now written a huge list of things that they need to do? But then it comes to the ecology of what happens. So you can do everything you possibly can in your control to make sure that your stresses are reduced as possible. And then you boom into the environment in which you're working or living, and that environment has a massive effect on you, which is why it's even more important to have that toolkit, that mental well-being toolkit that you can dip into. So when that environment starts to crowd in, you can deal with it. But the ecology is also, it's an NLP term, and it's all about the study of consequences or results of the impact of any change in behaviour. And that looks at, therefore, the wider system. So it's the consequences for yourself, it's the consequences for your family, for your colleagues, for society, and then if you want to get really deep, the planet as well. So ask yourself, what is it that stress is giving you? Now, I said at the beginning, I actually think that stress is a positive. You know, a lot of the stuff that I do is saying, let's not look at this as a weakness. It protects you from something. A lot of the things that, whether it's imposter syndrome, whether it's over worrying, whether it's anxiety, whether it's stress, they're actually protecting you. They're your bubble of protection that is giving you the skills to actually lead your businesses forward. It's how you manage it that's important, and how you make sure it doesn't get hold of you. Sometimes we hold our stress like a comfort blanket because it allows us then to protect ourselves a little bit more. But looking at the ecology, what happens if you reduce it? You know, actually, what happens to your business, and really importantly, the people in your care, if you can reduce how you respond to stress? Well, it cascades down. The way that they respond to stress, it becomes very different. And that's what we're just going to quickly look at now for the next 10 minutes, and then we're going to chat. But the first thing I'd like to do is, can everyone find a piece of paper near them? This is the everyone gets involved Blue Peter part of the session, just to make sure you're all concentrating. Okay, I'd like a volunteer, please. Just one. David Adams, saw your hand first. Okay. David, do you think that you could make a paper aeroplane out of your piece of paper? You're on mute.
It's probably 40 years, 50 years ago since I did it, but I'm sure I can remember.
Okay. So the first task is that keeping your piece of paper out of the view of the camera, so you can use it to try and remember 40 years ago how you did it. I would like you to talk through everybody else how to make a paper aeroplane. And what you're all going to do is you're going to try and follow David's verbal instructions to make your paper aeroplane. David, my dear, over to you. I bet you volunteered now, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm really pleased. Thing is, there's going to be a bit of a delay because I need to work out in my own head what I'm going to do before I tell you guys.
Okay. There's a reason for this. It's just not the fact that I've not written anything for this part of the talk. There is a reason for it.
Okay, whether this will work, I don't know. Okay, with your piece of paper in front of you, portrait, take hold of the top left and top right hand corners and fold down from the center so the two pieces of paper meet. You should end up with a shape a bit like a detached house. Everybody there? Okay. Turn it over and fold the longest edges together. So you've now got the shape of a half a detached house. Now, with the piece of paper in front of you, landscape, with the sharp end to your left, the square end to your right, hold the top edge of the paper down to the bottom edge of the paper. Okay, and then turn over. So you've got the sharp end of the paper on your right, the flat end of the paper on your left, and repeat the process. Okay. Pick it up, put your finger in the center, you're all there. You've got a pretty ropey aeroplane.
Well done. That's amazing. Okay, so a couple of things that I would like people to just contemplate on, and then we'll have a chat about it in a minute, is A, did you have some knowledge of what you were supposed to be doing? And therefore your muscle memory, not your muscle memory, your brain memory kicked in. So you had some knowledge of what you were supposed to be doing. B, how difficult was it to follow the instructions verbally? How difficult, David, did you find it? We'll come back in a minute. How difficult, David, did you find it to actually give those instructions just verbally? Okay, I'm not going to ask anyone to volunteer this. I'm going to do it myself. I'm now going to show you how to make an envelope out of another piece of paper or undo your amazing aeroplane, which you can actually redo later and show, put on a wall somewhere. I'm going to show you how to make an envelope for when you want to write a love letter to that person that you really love, or maybe make some paper flowers to actually put it in a paper envelope. Are you ready? No words, just showing you. I know it's the shittest envelope in the world, isn't it? But, you know, I never said I was an origami expert. Okay, so hands up those who found it easier to follow the instructions when they were being shown what to do. Hands up those people that found it easier to follow the instructions when they were being told what to do. No one. So there we have it. Thank God that worked. If you're being shown something, it is always easier to mimic that behavior rather than being constantly told why you should be doing it or actually how to do it. Now, when we move into training and when we move into learning, actually that blended learning approach is really important, because actually you have to tell someone and you have to show them. So the reason people move up the ladders in PR and comms is because they're being shown the ropes by somebody else and how to do it. But equally, the way they're being shown how to manage stress is coming from how the people in their environment, how their colleagues and their peers manage stress, and therefore how they should work in that environment. So that culture cascades from the top down. And the spirits and values of any organisation is determined by the leader of the business, or the leaders of the business. And, you know, and recently I've worked with a number of businesses, and it's shown that more and more. Like one of the wellbeing courses that I do, I worked with a business that wasn't in PR and comms, and it was very apparent that it was a tick box exercise, because the minute we started the care in comms, the minute we started the time to care program, the leader dropped off. Well, by the end of week 4, every other bugger had dropped off, because they weren't being shown the importance of committing to their own care and their own mental health and their own well-being. So that's why it becomes really, really important that we cascade this culture of how to deal with stress down. And I think it's something that's massively changing in our sector. I think it's something that didn't actually happen when we were all growing up in PR, not when I was growing up in PR anyway. You were fierce, you had to go into work ready for a fight virtually every single day. And actually showing stress or showing any sort of vulnerability, and apologies to the men, I know it's not all men too, but I think from a female perspective in business, if you went in showing anything less than fierceness, often it was seen as a weakness. And I think that it's changing, you know, I think it's changing, and I think it's fantastic. And I think it's okay as leaders to go in and say, guys, I'm feeling a bit stressed today because of this, this, and this. I just want you all to know, just in case, you know, just in case you pick up on something, this is how I'm dealing with it. Because actually that connection with your team allows them to see that A, you're feeling it, because we're all going to feel it. We work in a bonkers stressful sector, you know, but B, how you're dealing with it. And the fact you're connecting with others to get that help. Because by immediately saying out loud, I'm feeling a bit stressed, you feel better, because you've shared it, it's out. It's like writing your pages. So the other thing is that emotions are really a really important part of our business today, and something I think that we tried to push away back in the day. And I don't think we should be afraid of sharing it. I think emotions are really important in our blended hybrid workforces of the future. That's another technical term I came up with. I'm not sure it's going to catch on. Blended hybrid workforce of the future. It's not going to be a white paper, is it? Anyway, but what I'm saying is that those emotions are all part and parcel of how we live and breathe. And we've had insights to everybody's lives. You know, I can see Nikki's amazing David Bowie picture. I'm thinking, oh, does she like David Bowie? I know she does. But, you know, I can see Libby's picture behind her. I'm thinking, oh, is that because you've been there? We've got insights. You can see my ironing board, which actually is a piece of artwork. It's never moved. You know, so from that point of view, we've got these insights into people's lives. We're sharing those emotions already. Let's share and cascade down how to manage them and how to deal with them. So what can we be doing in our environments to help the people in our care? I'm sure everybody's doing it. It's a very natural thing. Well-being becomes the beating heart of the business, you know, the beating heart of the culture. But crucially as leaders, and I think this is where it has to cascade down to your leadership teams as well, we have to acknowledge that we can't fix everybody. You know, because I think sometimes you go into a business and you think, oh my God, they're really struggling. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this and this and this and this. And then you think, and you're still not sodding listening. What the hell? You know, actually, all you can do is gift them the skills, but they've got to take some of that responsibility themselves, which is why coaching-led leadership and training is so important, because coaching-led leadership and training actually gets the people in your care to take ownership of their own workloads, stresses, well-being. Makes, again, a more efficient and productive workforce. So I think the first thing is to forgive yourselves a little bit and just acknowledge you can't fix everybody, and acknowledge that sometimes all someone wants to hear is you say, I get it. I get that you're stressed. You know, they don't necessarily want you to fix them. They just want you to listen. So how can we help the people in our care? Well, one of the things that I've been doing, and I talked about the scale right at the beginning, I'm a massive fan of scales. And one of the things that I've been doing with the team at Brazen is, as part of my contract with them on wellbeing, is we've looked at a monthly check-in, and a month, you don't mind me sharing this, Nina, a monthly check-in with every single member of staff. Well, actually, if I try and check in physically with every single member of staff, it's going to cost Nina a hell of a lot of money. So we had to find a way of actually making sure that we could check in with the staff, and it was something that was real and purposeful and actionable without taking over my life, but importantly, the people in Nina's care, because they've all got their jobs to do as well. So they don't want to spend every single day of every single hour ringing me and going, oh, well, actually, I'm feeling okay now, you know, and I'm going, well, how are you going to deal with that? And let's talk about your goals and objectives. And they're thinking, for the love of God, Sarah, I've got a ring round to do. You're just making it all worse. So working on lots of psychological things that are already out there, we've come up with a couple of scales. The first scale is the strength circle, where we get people to identify their strengths every single month and rate them, and then we can look at actionably how we can move that forward. So for example, your strength might be creativity. Well, one month you could be feeling 5, and then we get you to rate it again the next month and you're feeling a 7. Well, what have you done in this last month to get you from a 5 to a 7? What positive things have happened? But equally, you might be a 7 one month and the next month you might be a 5. Well, the power of actually having any sort of scale, like the stress scale I asked you all to do at the beginning, is to know that you were a 7 the previous month and you might be a 5 now, but you can get back there. And that's the power of a scale. And also looking at people's strengths, you're helping develop their emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, the 6 core competencies of emotional intelligence, is a proven way of making sure through self-awareness, awareness of others, authenticity, some others that I can't quite remember, through actually working through that, what you're doing is you're making sure there's less likelihood of your team and your colleagues and your people in your care to have burnout. And then the second scale that we do is a happiness and emotional scale, following the emotions wheel. And I've set what those emotions are. And then again, we ask them to rate themselves every single month. Now, what that does is when someone sends me in their monthly check-in and they're anything below a 5, I can get in touch with them really quickly and go, what's going on? Do you want to talk about it? How can we help? It also means that, and every single person in Nina's care knows this, is that if they are starting to fall down the scale, if it becomes serious, then I escalate it, because I'm not a doctor, you know, I'm not a nurse, and you know, I'm involved in well-being and culture, and therefore I need to make sure that that person is safe and we have a safeguarding responsibility, which I think has probably been supercharged during COVID. So they fill in the scale, but what's the really powerful thing about that is, again, they can see, you know, where they are on happiness, on joy, on interest. You know, a lot of people are, you know, people have lost the mojo during COVID. You know, it's like, well, okay, what actionable thing can you do between this month and next month to pique your interest in something? And that scale works really well, along with some other stuff, you know, and group programs and coaching and various things. But actually having a scale within your businesses really helps identify the crunch points of where your business is and where your people are. Because if you can get there early enough, then, you know, going back to what you were saying about this being quite a filtered conversation, you know, actually you're not really seeing when people are hitting bubbling point. You're missing that point of where someone's going down the corridor with that silent tear coming down their face because that client said something awful to them. You know, when those conversations are going on at home, it becomes very insular. So actually by asking them to scale and rate themselves, what you're doing is you're putting a sense check in there. So by training them in human skills and by helping them build their emotional intelligence, you're essentially making sure that, hey, your businesses are going to run more effectively, boom, but importantly, you're looking after the people in your care. So there endeth my sermon for today. And hopefully, you know, you've enjoyed it. If you haven't, say nothing. And, you know, anybody would like to share anything about what they do, what they like, how they're feeling about stress?
Oh, that was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I hope there's some questions. I mean, I've got some, but I'd rather leave it up to, obviously, you leaders around the table if you've got anything to kick off. And that was a great plane, David. I haven't made one.
Yeah, I'd forgotten how to make one. I'm gonna.
Any questions?
I've got a comment, question. Sorry, I keep disappearing because I've had a few knocks on the door, and I've also got a dog that's desperate to go for a walk. So, no, it was really good, Sarah. Thank you very much. I think, some of the things you talked about, I'm familiar with on a personal level, having used things like that in my own life. But I do really like the idea of the scale. And I think that's something I've learned personally is a really good way of just sort of, like you said, it's breaking down the unspecific stuff and understanding where you are in the work that you're doing, and not asking you to break any confidentiality with Brazen, but you're obviously in quite a special position there, in that are people sending those scores directly to you and you're sort of filtering them back to Nina as appropriate? No. So it's just interested to understand how it works.
Okay, so and Nina, get involved, but the way it works is that my relationship with each member of staff is confidential. So in those one-to-one coaching, I have a one-to-one coaching session that works across the year. And they can talk to me about anything. They can talk to me about frustrations at work. We look at different coaching models if they want to look at how they want to move forward in their career. It might be something personal that they want. But equally with those scales, they come to me. I have a file set up for every single person there. And every single individual at Brazen knows that I will only escalate it for one of two reasons. Number one is that I'm concerned about their mental health and I know I can't help them. And number two, they've asked me to escalate it or intervene. That's right, isn't it, Nines?
Sorry, my dog's barking in response to your dog.
I'll mute mine in a minute, don't worry.
I just wanted to add that's completely right. And I think your team, they've got to trust in the process of it. So Sarah is our life coach and wellbeing officer, and they also know that we're good friends, but they've got enough trust, I hope, and faith in myself as the business leader and the leadership team, that we don't break what Sarah's just said, which is that trust and confidentiality. And we absolutely don't, because that just goes against everything that this is all about, isn't it? So you can't pay lip service to this, I think, is the key. And I just wanted to say just what a huge, massive difference having an independent life coach or wellbeing or happiness officer, like I think Tony's put into place, has been. I've tried to, for the past number of years, be the advocate of all things wellbeing and coaching and culture at Brazen. And I suppose it's been okay, but how can I be the first leader and also this really touchy-feely person interested in all their well-being? Well, that's my personal challenge as the leader, but I think having a person in your agency or in your business who can help you be that go-to for all things well-being is just, it's made an enormous difference to us, and I'm sure it would to anybody. And I don't know who else is trying it. But if you haven't, I would strongly recommend that everybody has a bit of a think about it.
That's great. Thanks both.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just ask hi.
Hi. Oh, hello, Nikki.
Hi, Sarah.
I was looking
you on Instagram every day. Thanks so much. That was really helpful. I think my question follows on from what Nina was saying, is for like the smaller agencies. I mean, we're really boutique, but growing very quickly. Suddenly, like a lot of agencies had suddenly had a massive boost in business. So I suppose for me, it's when you're not in a position to have someone come in and manage that for you. And we're obviously going to be stuck in this hybrid working model for quite a while with people at home and coming in and being super flexible. How would you recommend staying on top of that as the owner who still has to manage staff's well-being, but we're all over the place and growing? And is there anything that you can suggest doing maybe on like a weekly basis or a monthly basis that will just help check in with people and have that consistency, I suppose?
Well, the first thing, the most important thing is you looking after yourself and proving, showing that you look after yourself. bookending your day, and very obviously bookending your day, how you start your day, how you end your day, when you switch off, that will cascade through the culture of your business. So that is the easiest thing. I'm saying easiest because obviously you have to manage your own stressors. That's the easiest thing to do from a point of view of a smaller agency. Putting my sales hat on, there's I've got a time to care program, which is 4 modules, 4 weeks, mainly online. It's depending on what everyone's charging a day, it's not much more than a day's rate of what you're charging out to your clients.
Yeah.
And that I've done that with another company based in Birmingham. Well, I've done it with quite a few Manchester business, but another company based in Birmingham. And then what they've done is they've that course has then equipped someone within the business to take on a little bit more of a role of well-being. And then I come in every month and just sense check where everybody is. But obviously you don't need me, but there is stuff out there that, there's loads of stuff. I mean, obviously, it's much better that you work with me, but there's loads of stuff online that is just absolutely fantastic about sense checking. That things like the scales, that I've developed, the scales of emotion, scale, the wheels, that's something that can be put in relatively easily. And that's there's an admin obviously thing of someone checking that every month and just sense checking it, but they're quick wins.
Yeah, real. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, before we had Sarah and I was sort of being the person pushing wellbeing at Brazen, we had a wellbeing warrior, as we called it, within the team. Somebody who just loved all the wellbeing piece and worked with me. And then every Wednesday on Wellbeing Wednesday, she'd send around some hints and tips that she'd researched herself or run little seminars. So, we just empowered the members of the team who like it. I'm sure there's, people in your team who are into all this and others who are a bit more skeptical, to just get on with it themselves. So that's a nice thing as well, empowering them to sort of go on the journey. So get one of the team or encourage or ask them if they'd like to do it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I mean, Sarah probably knows I'm quite woo anyway. So you can see all my crystals behind me. I don't know how far I can take that with the team. But yeah, you're right, aren't you? It's that some people are really into it and some others just roll their eyes at you. So it's getting that balance right, isn't it?
Yeah, honestly. And like Sarah said at the beginning, the leaders cascade the culture, but I've got one of my board directors thinks all this is a whole load of rubbish and he's stuck back in the 80s probably, and he wouldn't mind me saying so. So we've dragged him on the journey. But that's okay, because I think it's all just about you do you and I'll do me. But as long as the culture of the overall company, if it sits naturally, if it's authentic to the business, then well-being is going to be a good thing, because it's going to keep people happier, and it's going to keep people in the business, and nobody wants your good people to leave, do you? So
no, that's great, thank you.
Can I butt in? I think it's important, and I'm like you, Nina. I've always pushed it, but I was conscious that I'm no expert here. I know what works for me. I know what doesn't work for me, and I know what works for other people. And we do all the kind of usual stuff, like the yoga and boot camp and all that kind of nice stuff that goes on. But I was conscious of, particularly with mental health and well-being, and we've had a couple of cases where we've had people really suffering, that I've no idea what I'm doing there. I'm completely out of my depth. So the person we've taken on is somebody who's worked in the health service for 30 years before they come here. But they bring that kind of rigor and process to it that gives you some confidence and hope that you're doing the right things. And one of the first things that they put in place, and this is free for anybody, whatever scale, is wellness action plans. Just they were born out of a report a few years ago, Thriving at Work report, I think. Mind have a really good website, and I'd encourage you to have a look at that, because a lot of what Sarah was saying, I think you might agree, it's about giving individuals, the tools to cope. It's not about you diving in there and being the saviour. You ain't going to happen like that. You've got a busy life and your own stresses. It's giving people the tools And a lot of it is about communication, which we're brilliant at for our clients, but rubbish at about in between ourselves, especially when it comes to talking about stuff, like the mental health stuff. It gets, there's taboos and stuff that you just don't go down. So the wellness action plans, they sound really dull, and it's just 10 really simple questions that you ask yourself about what you do in certain situations and how you react, and then encouraging people to share them with leaders. It gives you a tool. Then you've got some understanding then of why somebody's being like they are being, and what they would expect you to do. So sometimes, like Sarah said, it's a question of, oh, you just leave them alone now, and they'll be all right within a couple of days, or that's them crying for help, and you need to have a conversation with them. It's brilliant. It's a really
good
toolkit.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest something that we've recently signed up for, well, maybe about a year ago, I think called Health Assured. So we've hired someone a bit like you as well, Tony. She's come from an M&S background, so she was at head office in Marks Spencer, so pretty corporate, quite a different way of looking at things. Really had to kind of like tell her what PR was at the start. But she's brought in quite a lot of kind of big kind of company structure and some tools that we didn't know anything about, and one of these things was Health Assured. It's not like massively expensive, and everyone basically has their own app, their own login, their own access, and it's this massive portal, and it's just like full of like webinars, seminars, hints and tips, fact sheets. You have one-to-one personal counsel. It's like nothing to do with like Carousel. We don't know anything about it. Doesn't escalate to us at all. So it's very much like, personal counselling service. I think there's like 10 free services for everyone, and it's just a monthly subscription. But I think we've had it for about 6 to 9 months, and the feedback has been so good from the team. Like, it's a really well used resource, just as like and completely standalone from the as well. So I'd really recommend that.
Sounds good. I'm just quite conscious of time. So we said we go on until about 1 o'clock. I'm sure people are lining up their gins or wine or whatever. So has anybody got any more questions or anything they want to chat about? Obviously, why we've got this opportunity with Sarah. I mean, I just hope personally, I think you talked about, you said before, well-being and wellness is the heart of the business. It's always been something I've been passionate about when I've worked within organisations, and I think obviously the last 15 months have really obviously brought it to the front of people's minds, and I just hope that continues as we move forward into whatever world we go into post-pandemic, the hybrid world or whatever that may be, and it's not just a tick box exercise like you taught before, because I know there's organisations out there that do it to put it on their social media or look like they're doing something.
Yeah.
But, I think it's a process, isn't it, of evolution that will need to keep growing and continuing.
Definitely, without a shadow of doubt. And I think it's changing. I do think it's there. I don't think it's, I don't think it's such a big ask, because I think fundamentally people care, and that's all you need. Is you just need someone that cares, and if you care, then that's going to cascade down. So yeah, it's just making sure that there's things in place, whatever those things are, that have a way of being actionable.
It is, yeah. I know I do some of those things. I've got into journaling a bit, and I try and do that with my daughter as well, who's only 7. We've started doing a bit of journaling through school, and Nikki, a bit like you, I've not really into crystals, but I've become a bit obsessed about the moon as well. About the full moon and its energies and all of that. It's quite.
We should definitely do another Zoom for that.
I like the rubber crystal now and again.
I will say though what Sarah was saying. I got into a really good habit last year. It's kind of gone out the window now, I will be honest. But the Miracle Morning is really good, it's a mixture of journaling, 6 steps. So journaling, meditation, exercise, reading, visualization, and what's the other one? Affirmations. So the concept is similar to what Sarah was saying, is you spend an hour before you do anything else in the morning just doing those 6 things. We ended up doing about 5 minutes each in the end, but it was just such a good way of like setting your day up before you do anything and start looking at your phone and everything else. So yeah, definitely recommend that for sure.
Well, I hope we can continue this conversation at some point. But yeah, it's been fantastic. We've had loads of comments here saying thank you, Sarah. So
thank you, everybody.
Probably for myself and everybody on here. And I was recording this, so if that's okay, I'll share it to everybody, and then obviously your details as well. But thank you again.